Hey guys, welcome back to Doc Lale Talks Comics. And again, we're here in the old setup and we're going to do the books I picked up at the comic shop this week. So I hope you guys have been having a great week so far. It's going to be a little bit of a short week for me. I'm off on Friday, but I've got count them, three doctor's visits: dentist, diabetic, and eyes. So hopefully everything goes well there, but I am going to be pooped by the time I get done with those three doctor's visits because they're scattered out between 8 a.m. and about 2 in the afternoon. So anyway, enough about me. Let's take a look at these books and show you what I picked up this week. All right, the book of the week is going to be Arcadia issue number 5. And the artwork and the writing is done by the Miranda brothers. And you get to see Halu and her friend Rourke and Halu's girlfriend. And they're all, they are all headed towards a city called Aston Capital. And they're trying to get through there, but they've got their massive vehicle, their 4-wheel drive. And then Rourke has a motorcycle. And eventually they get where they're going, but they're told on the way they get stopped, and they said there's pretty much a red death. Okay, there's red gas that's covering everything, and they said you got to get masks. And so one guy comes up and says, "Heard you need masks. Lucky you, I've got some extras. How many do you need?" And he says 3. And he said, "That bike's a beauty. You need 3 masks. I need out of this jam. What do you say?" So Rourke had to give up his motorcycle, one of his, beloved things, in order to help them get to Aston Capital. But before they get there, they run across all these dead cows, and then they see pretty much alien-looking death squads, and they're going around taking people out in the middle of these, this red death. And so Rourke says, "We need another way through." And you get to see him drive very Mad Max-like right through the red cloud. And in case you haven't done this before or read any of the Miranda Brothers books, they're musicians as well. So up here with this USB, with this scan code, you can open your phone and scan that code. It'll take you to an original soundtrack, and it's called Death to the Serent. So I've got a feeling it's one of those tracks that makes it sound like you're driving through a cloud of red death in a Mad Max-esque type world. But you finally get through that, and you get to see this beautiful shot of what looks like the Grand Canyon, and the stars are open, and it's just beautiful sky. It's just very humbling. And unfortunately, when they get to the city, then you get to see Rourke, and something happens to him, and he's gone. But in the end, you see Halu crying over Rourke. And just as they get into the city from the ferry, he cries. And he says, "He was my father." And it's just one of those moments. I don't like to spoil last pages, but it's one of those moments that really just hits you in the feels. It makes you feel something that is not always a positive feeling. You feel like you've lost something. And, and you feel the pain that this character is going through. So we still have at least one more issue, possibly 2 more issues to Arcadia before it gets finished from Ignition Press. But this was an absolute amazing book with classical artwork from the Miranda brothers and a story that just kind of hits you, makes you feel a certain kind of way. All right, next up we have a Mark Bagley cover to Amazing Spider-Man number 29. We are getting very, very close to Amazing Spider-Man 1000. That absolutely blows my mind that I have all the issues from 183 heading all the way to the current issue. the one that I hold in my hand. But you get to see that really, that's very detailed, and that's really great. So good job, Mark, as always. You are one of the primo amazing Spider-Man and just Spider-Man in general artists out there. And we get to see Spore. This issue is written by Joe Kelly with guest artist is Pete Woods. And you get to see Spider-Man trying to go through here with Daredevil, and he's trying to push himself. He's trying to become a better Spider-Man, faster, more in tune with his spider sense. And so Daredevil tries to use a flashlight, as if it were a weapon. And he's trying to teach Peter, hey, just treat this as though it were a weapon. And in the end, he says, Matt, there's room for improvement. Isn't that enough? And Matt says, if you say so. The test wasn't the bullets, it was the flashlight. Semispinalis capitis. This muscle right here is what he said, and it kind of points to the back of his neck. He says, right as I flipped on the flashlight, I heard you just tense. You knew the light was coming, even though you knew it wouldn't hurt you. He says, but I didn't get a tingle. My spidey sense didn't go off. He says, right, but, you didn't know that you knew. As the resident expert on heightened senses, that says to me that some part of you is limiting your spider sense. So you get that. You get Brian Nearing, who is Peter's old high school buddy, and you get to see that Spidey wants to do some physical, boxing and training with Ray, and Ray's sitting there watching How I Met Your Mother. So it's kind of funny how that, Peter has always been a relatable character, and his cast has always been relatable as well. Minus Paul Rabin. Nobody likes Paul, and rest in peace, but you're done. Even Torment didn't like you. So you get to see all of these different characters, and you even get to see this mysterious cousin who's now calling himself Mac, going and helping Aunt May. And so she says, you just remind me of somebody. And she smiles. So is this the love child of, May and somebody else? Does the Trouble miniseries that Mark Millar and the Dodsons did years ago, is that coming full circle? Is that where we're heading? I don't know yet. But then eventually you get Brian, aka Spore, and he invites Peter to a place called Whimsy's Wonderland Pizza Adventures. So it's kind of like Chuck E. Cheese for us in this part of the country. And so you eventually get to see that Brian has controlled all of these other people in Peter's life. And even the Dr. OS at where, the corporation where Brian and Peter were working, Rand. And eventually Brian kind of spits spores in Peter's face, and it disorients him. But he says, tell me, why did you sabotage what I started? And he says, it wasn't me. It was my clone. It wasn't me. And so eventually Peter gets control of his hand, and he swings and he punches straight out to hit Brian. And he says, I get a moment of control and instantly regret it. It's a hit that I'd feel guilty laying on the Juggernaut. And eventually you get to see that, he comes back and Spore says, someone's been working out. You look surprised. Haven't I been saying this for years? I'm a fun guy. Fun guy. Spore. Get it? So, is this going to be a 2-issue part that nobody's ever going to remember? Or is this going to be one of Peter's newest good guy, bad guy relationships? Is this going to be not another Norman Osborn Green Goblin in that particular setting? And, you know, he's not going to become one of his complete arch nemesis. But I wonder if this guy is going to stick around after the Joe Kelly run, or if this is just another character that is going to pop up for a few issues, and then boom, Brian Nearing is no more. Who knows? Who knows? But we are on the road to Amazing Spider-Man 1000. And that's what I'm excited about, is getting to say ASM 1000. All right. Next up, we have Battle Beast, issue number 9 by Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley. I keep saying it. This book is just more and more fun. These 2-page spreads, you can tell just how much fun Ryan Ottley is having drawing this. This just seems to be so much more in his wheelhouse. He loved doing Amazing Spider-Man, I think, to start out with Nick Spencer, but then it just got to be too much. And here he's able to create, he's able, you know, Image kind of gives you a little bit more freedom, I think. And so he defeats the Juggernaut and the Colossus, and now his friend here is now the king of Fantania. And you get to see this absolute amazing two-page spread of the joy and this celebration at Fantania being reborn and the destruction being abated. Then the next page, you get another double-page spread, and this shows that they've begun rebuilding the capital and rebuilding the city. So sometimes you get funny stuff, though, because you get Pavina the Unyielding, leader of the Fantanian resistance. And the king, he says, I don't know. It kind of feels like you were hoping to be ruler of this newly freed Fantania before I came along and got in your way. And so here's where you get good artists from not so good artists. She's like, me? No, of course not. I would never die your birthright. I'm loyal only to you, ... my king. And he said, there's that pause again. And so you get to see them kind of looking at each other, trying to figure each other out, and saying, you know, hey, how's this going to work? And he says, you know, if you betray me, I won't hesitate to take your life. And she says, I assure you, I'm well aware. Good. Excellent. Lovely meeting you, Pavina. Likewise, King Salaka. So let's just say that this has been building to where it's going, and you get to see possibly the most interesting villain for Battle Beast at the end of this issue. Somebody who might actually be able to grant him his wish, more so than any other character that you've ever seen. I'm not going to spoil who that is, but it's right in that Invincible Battle Beast wheelhouse. So this is just a lot of fun, guys. And like I said, I've never read Invincible before, but this, you can tell these two guys are absolutely having the time of their life creating issue after issue of Battle Beast. All right. Next up, we have G.I. Joe issue number 22 by Joshua Williamson and Andrea Molina and Lee Lowridge. And unfortunately, guys, this is part of the video that's not going to be so much fun. They've kind of cut my hours back at work, so I'm not working. You know, it's going to be good for my family because I'm going to be able to come home earlier in the afternoon, but it's not going to give me the same amount of hours that I've been making. So I'm going to have to start cutting some more books. I promise you, this is not going to be a channel where I get 3 books a week. It'll be more than that. But unfortunately, even though this is a 3-parter, I'm going to have to let G.I. Joe go after this issue. It's not because it's not good. I don't want you to get that understanding. This was an excellent book. We've got Crystal Ball here on the cover. We've got the Dire Technology. We have Risk, who is daydreaming about what has happened to his old crew while he's, you know, in this country trying to discover some energon with his G.I. Joe buddies. So you have a whole lot of moving parts. Destro and his 3-man team run up on the Joes and their 3-man team, and they go back and forth about energon. And eventually Mercer, who was one of the Cobras, gets captured by Crystal Ball and in one of his machinations, and gets sucked into, you know, you don't know where, and you don't know what happened to him. And so eventually Crystal Ball says, you know, I developed the dire tech to interrogate inmates to get them to reveal their secrets, but I was told I went too far. They didn't understand. The tech, powered by Energon, doesn't just create illusions. It peers into your heart, studies your soul, reads your mind to find your fears. So this is really a very interesting character, and like I said, I hate to drop G.I. Joe, but it's just one of the necessary evils I'm going to have to continue this channel. And I'm not a shill, guys. I'm really not, but I'm going to take about 2 seconds here. If you guys want to help me out, tell everybody you know about the channel. Let's keep growing and getting people that love comics. If you love comics, I know that you know 2 people at your shop, probably. At least 2 people that would love this channel. So go ahead and be my acolytes. Build this channel up. Make it to where I can start doing more with the channel. And then maybe once I get to that 500, I can get a little bit of a kickback towards from YouTube. And if that's the case, then eventually once I get the channel large enough, I'll be able to use some of that money to go back into comics, and we can just keep growing this thing. And it's just, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. I love spending time with my family. I love being able to go out there and spend time with my wife, who's still coalescing, and it's going to be probably, you know, she's going to be home all summer before she goes back to work in August. And I love spending time with her. I love the opportunity to get to grow alongside her. I love her so much, and I'm so glad that she's still here. But I just can't afford to do things like the ASM purchase and big stacks of books at the same time that I'm losing hours. Anyway, guys, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm just saying, get out there, my acolytes. Find you 2 people. Refer them to the channel. Let's keep building this thing. Don't forget, we have that giveaway when we get to 500. And right now I'm at 285 subscribers. So we're getting there slowly but surely, but we are climbing that mountain. All right, guys, that's enough of that. Like I said, I'm not a huckster nor a shill. So we're going to move on to Murder Podcast issue number 7. And if I'm correct, this is the penultimate issue of... Yes, this is the penultimate issue of Murder Podcast. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure what happened to Mike Tisserand, but this issue was written by Jeremy Haun and illustrated by Danny Luckert and Andy McDonald. So that's going to be the artist for issue 7 and issue 8. And you finally get to meet the 2 people who were the original creators of the Dead Sounds podcast. You get Gina and Vivi. And guess what? They're not evil. They're not the ones that created this. But what ended up happening is they got in to this town and they were trying to study what happened to Audrey Penn. And Audrey Penn, you know, as they get deeper into the story, you find out that there's politicians involved. The sheriff was not involved. He was he was on the up and up. He was trying to solve this, but it's bigger than these 2 girls. But what ends up happening is one of the girls is captured, and let's just say that she becomes a conduit for the podcast. I'm not going to spoil anything more than that, but you get to see just how far these evil people will go in order to sow destruction and bring about their world plan. And in the end, you get this awesome artwork by Danny Luckert and Andy McDonald. And Andy McDonald is going to actually do the final issue solo, but it comes full circle. Everything is starting to come full circle. And what I like about that is it wasn't a 4-issue mini that they just crammed everything into it. But what is odd is you're getting the answers that you want, but as far as the main cast that you've been following for 6 issues, nowhere to be found. So it's kind of a shift where we're not studying the outside anymore. We're actually studying what happened with these girls, with this podcast, and how all of this came to be. So it's good to have answers. I'm not complaining about that. It's just kind of strange how it shifted from one set of characters to now we're getting a totally different story in the last 2 issues. I understand you got to wrap it up. And who knows, there might be a murder podcast volume 2. And if that's the case, I'm there for it. But don't get me wrong, this was a great book. I love what Jeremy Hahn has done. It was just a little bit shocking to move from characters you know to all of a sudden, oh, well, we're going to get the answers that we want, but where are the people we've been reading about? All right, next up we have Nectar by Jeremy Robinson, Anna Paulino Martello, layouts by Francesco Francini, colors by Steve Cannon, and letters by Jim Campbell. And I'm still tripping out that we have killer butterflies, man. And in this issue, you actually get to see that they just, once somebody has died, these butterflies will absolutely descend on them and just suck everything out. Not just blood, but every bodily fluid is their nectar. So at first I thought this was going to be amazing, the first issue. And in the second issue, it got a little bit corny and a little bit out there. But now you have characters being totally fine and then they're dead by the next page. Sorry guys, I know this is a little bit gory, but it's really beautiful artwork. You get to understand the motivations of butterflies. And butterflies, you know, I guess you could do thought balloons, thought bubbles, narration boxes, something like that that are telling you what the butterflies are thinking. But based on their movement, they're a hive mind. So you wouldn't get anything from the individual butterflies. You wouldn't have some butterflies saying, "Oh my God, what are we doing to these people?" And another butterfly saying, you know, "We must feed, and we must feed well." You know, you're not going to get that. But what you do get is you get a preacher who's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and starts attributing the one guy who could save them all to working with the devil. And he says, we're going to go out here and send all of these people straight to the Almighty. Anybody who's dancing, anybody who has this St. Vitus dance, you know, and that's not really what it is, but you get what I'm saying. Anybody out here who's dancing, we're just going to ventilate their head. And he says, we're going to send them straight to the Almighty, for he is the only one that can save their immortal souls. And you get to see the 2 girls that were originally in the first issue that were dancing. They've been picked clean by these butterflies. And the preacher and Amos, who is the doctor, are at odds. Amos says, this is odd. Why is this happening? And the preacher just says, it's you, Amos. You're the one that's been studying these butterflies for all these years. You allowed the devil to come into this town. So all I got to say is that this issue actually saved it, because I was thinking that if it stayed slow the way that it was, I was actually going to drop it as well. But I'm here for at least issue number 4. But hey, Nectar is an amazing book. You should check it out if you hadn't already. Okay, and the last new book that we're going to talk about is Walking Dead Deluxe issue 137. And we have Carl and Lydia from The Whisperers on the front cover. She's checking out his eye socket there. You get to see more with Gregory and these murderous boys' mother and father. You get to see Sophia, you know, telling Carl, "Thank you for saving me from those guys a few issues ago." And then you get Maggie talking to Carl, and Carl has kind of struck up a friendship with Lydia, okay? And so I believe that Maggie's conversation was, you've earned her trust, you need to go down there and talk to her, and you're going to tell her that she can come out. But you're going to warn her and tell her, if you do anything to try to harm any of my people, I'm personally gonna kill you. I'm not gonna let you hurt anybody that I love. And she says, that's what you guys do, kill people that threaten you? And he said, we did. We had to so that we could survive. Doing that, it allowed us to survive long enough to find places like this so that we don't have to do that anymore. So like I told you, we have changed. And she says, but you threatened me. And he said, I had to make sure. I'm really sorry about that. I didn't mean it. And at the end, or towards the end, you get Gregory, who's a two-time and no good, and he tries to give Maggie some knockout juice inside her wine while he's acting like he's trying to talk to her. And eventually, you get that page that I'm not going to show you, but Lydia comes on to Carl. Is Carl about to lose his virginity? We don't know. But the last page of the issue looks like that's the direction that they're heading. So I like to call this issue Sleeping with the Enemy. And we'll just leave that at that. All right, but 2 more books that I've got, the videos are coming up on. I've got a greatest hits for 2 videos, and it's going to be a facsimile copy of Batman issue number 244. I love this Neal Adams cover. I don't know why. I wish that the brown at the top was a little more red. I think that would make it set it off, it kind of in the same way that it set off the Amazing Spider-Man 252, the first appearance of Venom. You get that kind of dark purplish red sky behind Spidey who's swinging. And I think if it had been more of a reddish kind of sky, then it would have looked a lot better than it did. But this is a story by Denny O'Neil with art by Neal Adams and Dick Giordano. And let's see. I'm just going to give you a 2-page kind of look at it just like that. I cannot wait to dig into this issue, man. For $3.99, I'm all about that rather than spending the original money on it for the original issue. But I'm so excited to read this. Neal Adams, at this point, was at the height of his powers, and you get to see Ra's al Ghul, you get to see Batman, Talia al Ghul. It's just classic stuff, man. It looks great. And also classic is this facsimile edition of Silver Surfer issue number 3. So that one was written by Stan Lee with art by John Buscema and embellished by Joe Sinnott, who would be removed and taken over. The inking would be taken over by Sal Buscema starting with issue 4. And then you have Mephisto, who is the devil, who we really don't like because he broke up Peter and Mary Jane's marriage when nobody else or anything else could do that. So we'll do this in another Greatest Hits video as well, guys. Thank you for joining me for another week of Doc's pickups. I love reading these books. I love talking about these books. And I love getting to spend this time with you guys each and every week. So let me know in the comments if you guys enjoy getting to have this conversation with me. I'm still trying to work out how to add little blurbs and stuff like that over here on the side of my head in these videos. So if anybody out there is a video editor or things like that, I have done some videography before, but I am not as well versed in it as I am photography. But if anybody out there does know how to do that, please hit me up. I'm more than willing to learn. I'm trying to make these videos better and more expansive and easier to deal with you guys. And that's really the only thing that's keeping me back from doing like a final order cutoff video on the weekends or something along those lines, is the fact that I can't show you what's coming. And I don't want to leave you guys out and leave you hanging by saying, oh, man, you got to go out and get Saga of the Swamp Thing, issue number 2, 1989, issue number 2, and then there's nothing here. I'm just showing you air. That's not how good channels progress. I want to continue to get better in my presentation, as well as just bring you guys high quality content. So, like I said, anybody out there that thinks they can help me out, reach out to me. Hit me up and I'll give you my email address and we will try to get this thing rolling. But thanks for joining me again, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, just enjoy your books, read your books, treat people the way you want to be treated, and I'll catch you in the next video.